Hello, I'm Sean Lambert, and today I'm going to walk you through my experience at Compass Expo Spring 2024. So if you've never been to a Compass Expo before, they take place in Connecticut, and they are currently being hosted at the Comfort Inn in Meriden, which is, for all intents and purposes, a very cheap, but you get what you pay for kind of place, and it's often an interesting experience. But that said, it is cheap. The convention itself is only $50 for the entire weekend, which is amazing, and it is really about playing games. It's not the kind of convention where you go and have a bunch of fancy vendors. The only people who sell anything there are Compass themselves, which is great. You don't have to worry about getting stuff stole to you. Compass doesn't have to sell you the games. You're gonna buy them just from seeing them, essentially. But anyway, I went to the entire thing. Showed up in the afternoon of the 16th. Played some limited games. I played the first thing I played, I think, of the whole week was a test game of Gregory Smith's distant future Yamato, sinking the Yamato. So it's like the last ride of the Yamato. So the whole game is about getting attacked by hundreds of planes, basically, and you die. You die really quick. In my case, I got 10 torpedoes to the stern on in the first, I think it was wave, the sub wave was 4, but it was wave 1, so the very first wave of planes that came sunk me. But theoretically, you could make it up to 20 turns total, and I think the best someone did, they made it to turn 19 and then got sunk. But it's really hard. You got to get pretty lucky on a lot of rolls, because the way it works is if planes group up at one part of your ship, the defenses get overwhelmed and you just get hit by everything. But if you can make it through the first wave, it does get easier, supposedly. So I only played it the one time, but from the other playthroughs I saw the remnants of, not everyone did so hot either, but supposedly somebody did make it to turn 19. So that was just kind of hanging out on Thursday. Because I got in late, I didn't really get to do that much. I had to work earlier in the day, so I only got a half day off. Then on Friday, I did start being able to play some more games. So Friday, I had bought some of the games I bought started to come into play. So I've been on a big naval game kick lately, and one of the games that I had been interested in getting was Sovereign of the Seas. This is a strategic level 7 years war to Napoleonic's strategic Age of Sail game. And gotta say, we played basically a turn and a half of it. And in that turn and a half, we kind of found a lot of bugs that probably should have been worked out. This is a production model, so it also had some pretty embarrassing typos. Now, I am not the kind of person that cares too much about errata. Like, I'm willing to print out an errata sheet and play with that. But that being said, the errata in this game are pretty significant, and the fact that one of them is on a player aid. So I don't know if you can look at the spelling of breast. Yeah. So that's your good squadron. But yeah, there were some problems with the game. The pieces are actually very nice looking. I did like the pieces. They are very nice looking, but the information on them isn't too important. I mean, I guess I just our initial impression was not super favorable, so I don't know if I'd recommend picking it up. I am going to try to play a little bit more of it, and with an intention of being able to combine it with flying colors for tactical battles, so playing a linked campaign kind of thing. And that was the second game I played. Well, third, including the Yamato. The second game I played was Flying Colors. Somebody had a copy of Flying Colors, and that's a game that's been on my list. That's been on my list for a while now. And Flying Colors is a tactical Age of Sail game, but it is meant for more fleet battles. So it's a fleet tactical. So the scenario I played was not a fleet battle. It was just a single ship against a bunch of frigates. And my mission was to stop at least one frigate from escaping. And I failed in that dismally. It was a very difficult scenario because if the second they get good wind, you can't catch them anymore. It's really hard to catch up, and it's hard to slow something down unless you get lucky and knock their sails out. So, I mean, maybe there's a strategy I completely missed, but I let them bunch up probably too much. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't get ahead of them in any way because you start really far behind. So it was a really fun scenario, and I think I'll probably eventually get the game again for purposes of linking it with Sovereign of the Seas. And I think it could be really cool, naval battle simulator, basically. But by itself, both of the games were still fun, but I would say between the two, if you're just going to play either Flying Colors or Sovereign of the Seas, definitely go with Flying Colors. It's a lot more polished. So then from there, after I finished my little Age of Sail naval thing, I split off and played the game that I was most excited to play. And this may or may not come out before my unboxing, but I recently got a copy of A Most Fearful Sacrifice. And this is a game that basically since November of last year, the Compass Expo that I went to, I've been trying to get. And they reprinted it. So I was able to order the reprint, and I basically was punching as we went, as the scenario went. The amazing thing about the quality of it is that you could punch without having to clip basically. I mean, there was the counters came out so cleanly that you really didn't need to clip them. So it didn't bother me that at all that there were pieces that had a little bit of fuzzies, but they were such high quality that it really didn't make a difference. And we played the campaign game. So we started from the very beginning of the battle, and we made it through a day, in about a day. So it turned out to be an extremely interesting playthrough. An extremely interesting playthrough because what I did, I was playing as the Confederacy, and what I did was completely ahistorical. I didn't go around to the right at all. I actually went around to the left, and it was a huge mistake strategically. And we talked about it after the battle, what I would have done differently, or what I should have done. Is the flank to the right is very, very important to having any sort of success at all in the battle. The key is you have to threaten the reinforcements that are coming up the road towards Gettysburg. Otherwise, they can just reinforce the front with impunity. And in order to break through, you can't have an entire corps come up. So you have to delay the arrival of the first corps in some fashion. Now, some of that is luck-based because if Reynolds stays alive, he's the first casualty of the battle. If he stays alive, then they get a lot more activations. And he did stay alive pretty long time, like basically till his historical death. The other impact of Reynolds is that he got pretty lucky, so they got good activations, and I couldn't do anything to slow down the deployment of the First Corps. And in fact, the 11th Corps even was pretty successful at getting up to the front line. And so by the time that I should have been in Gettysburg, I was nowhere near it. So we called it at the end of the first day because there was no more advancing to be done. I was so far behind schedule, there was nothing I could do that would have changed the outcome. But it was a really interesting thing because I sent Jubal early. Instead of pushing down the road right from the north, he ended up going all the way around to the left and had some guys up on Wolf Hill by the end of the battle, if you know where that is. So it was a pretty janky little swing and not overly effective strategically, although it did force him to shift some units to that side. Because the interior lines of the Union are so short, if you do that setup, if you don't go around to the right, it shortens the Union lines significantly, and the bulk of their reinforcements are not threatened at all from that particular position. Their day 2 reinforcements would be threatened, but their day 1 reinforcements don't even have to worry about it. They could walk right by you. So the plan kind of backfired, but it was fun to try anyways. The other thing that I really made an effort to do is walk around and see all of the games that were being played. So I'm going to go through the list in basically alphabetical order. I don't remember what order I actually saw them in, but there's two main rooms, and I went through both of them on both Thursday and Saturday and made sure that no new games had sprung up. And I think I got a picture or video of everything that was significantly played. So the first one was Air and Armor Wurzburg, the German town. So the premise of this is I think it's a relatively new design. Not even sure if it was released yet, but it was kind of a tactical, maybe grand tactical looking game. I didn't really get too much into the rules, so I'm not so sure on what it looked like, but it was quite expansive, the map itself. The counters looked really nice, and if you're into that, I assume it's a Cold War gone hot kind of scenario. If you're into that kind of thing, maybe check it out. That's a Compass game, and I'm not sure if it's out or if it's going to be coming out soon, but if you want to know more about it, just let me know and I will find out. Then we had Blood on the Ohio, which I think I had seen set up in November as well. I don't know too much about this one either, about how it plays, but it did look like a block game, so there is hidden movement involved. So I'm not a huge block game player myself, although I do think they are cool designs. I like games where I can play them by myself and with another person. Then probably the game that everyone thought was going to be the big hit of the convention, and arguably was Burning Banners. And Burning Banners is kind of a fantasy war game, a very good looking fantasy war game. Again, didn't really play it at all. Can't report on the quality beyond what I could see from basically the same angle as my camera. But enough people were playing it that I think there's probably a pretty good opinion of the game, which makes me think that it could be worth picking up sooner rather than later in case it does sell out. Now, Compass did seem to have a good production run of it, so I think there's probably enough copies to go around, but there might be one you want to pick if you are at all interested in a fantasy war game, which personally I'm not. I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably not gonna get it. I'm not ever gonna play it. So, but if you are into a fantasy like Warhammer-esque war game, it seems very Warhammer. It would probably be good to pick that up sooner rather than later because it is very popular. Then I saw another very popular game, Downfall. Downfall is about the last gasp of the German Reich in World War II, but from the point of view of everyone who's trying to piece it up. So there is no German team. You are playing really against the other allies. And it's a very interesting looking game. I don't know anything about how to play it, but it looks really cool, and everyone says it's really good. But again, haven't played it. Then I believe this was a prototype or a very early print run, was Golden Age of Piracy, which looks really, really cool. Again, didn't play it, so don't know too much about it, but it looks like it's a very small form factor, which for me is appealing. I'm always looking for games where I could fit them, squeeze them onto the bed at night, where I could just play them while the TV is on or something like that. And there was this Guadalcanal naval and air World War II game. The rule seems, like a standard plot your movement and then compare notes kind of movement rules. I did sit around and watch it being played for a while. Seems pretty heavy. A lot of different counters. And this was a prototype, so not a production game. Then there was, I think it's called In the Trenches. I might be wrong on that, though. This was like a World War I tactical game, from the looks of it. And it had really beautiful player aids. Not sure how the game is, but the player aids looked from a distance to be very good. And I did see that it had gotten played by somebody by the end of the weekend. I don't know who it was. I didn't get a chance to ask because there was no one there at that point. But somebody had played it, so it's obviously a playable game. So we'll see. That one's probably more to come. I'm not sure if that's production or if that was a prototype, but that one's probably going to be out that's another Compass game, and that one's probably going to be out soon. It looked like it was either the prototype that they, like the print prototype that they get after the first run before accepting the delivery, or it was already a production version. There was Jutland, Fleet Admiral Jutland. I thought this one looked really cool. I like the darker color water on the maps. Give it more of a North Sea vibe. I like the look of the counters. The counters looked really nice. And honestly, if I can get my hands on a copy of this, I probably will, because it's a topic that actually is interesting to me. Like I said, I do enjoy naval games. The Russian campaign. So the Russian campaign is... there are two branches of it right now. There's the Compass version, which is basically a straight-up reprint of the original. And then there's the GMT version, which has some improvements being made to it. And theoretically, that is the one to get if you're going to choose between the two, as far as I understood it. So I hung out with them for a while watching the Russian campaign being played. And it's a really high-level game, so there's corps and armies, and it looks like a lot of fun, to be honest. So I'm probably going to try to play that at some point in the next couple of years, just for educational purposes more than anything, because it is considered a classic design. Also got to see one of the Next War series. I have never seen them in person, but I've been tempted and interested by them in the past. What was being played was Next War Vietnam, which it was really good looking, but I don't know too much about the gameplay. From what I could hear, the snatches of what I was hearing, as it was a very detailed kind of game. So a lot of buzzwords were flying around about details of their squadrons and their naval and air components. So it could be a little bit heavy. I'm not sure what... I know that the series has a reputation of being pretty heavy. So it could be right up my alley, because I do like games on the heavier side. But at the same time, I'm not a huge fan of modern games in general. So it is pretty low on my wish list. But if I were going to pick one, probably Vietnam would be the one, because you get that naval, air, and land component. We had Prelude to Rebellion, sorry. And this one, I think this was another Compass offering. I believe it's in production. But anyway, this was being played. Also, very good looking game. Area movement, and seemed to be relatively card driven. So if you like a lot of cards, it reminded me a lot of the design for War for America, like the kind of big map, area movement, but relatively high level strategic kind of gameplay. Then we had Schutztrupp. Schutztrupp looks to be a very good-looking game, and I was in love with the map. Like, just the map alone would sell that game to me. Then you get into the topic, and just having a game that's based around East Africa, or really anything about anything other than the North Africa, World War II kind of stuff about Africa is really interesting to me. So topic-wise is interesting, and map-wise is really interesting. Mount Kilimanjaro is on the map, so I don't know anything about the rules or how it plays, but looks good. And sometimes that's all that matters. Another one that looked good, and that turned out to be another block game, was Son of Austerlitz. And this one, the map looked like something I would play Kriegspiel. It was really beautiful. Honestly, the map on this one is really beautiful. And because it's a one mapper, you could play what it looks like the whole Battle of Austerlitz on one map, which is amazing. We also had the Korean War, another Compass title. That was huge. They played that all week, well, basically the entire time. I don't know if they actually got to the end of it, but every time I checked, nobody was there. So I didn't really get to ask any questions about it. But it was cool to see it all set up. The map is very display heavy, so there's a lot of stuff on the map. It reminded me a lot of like an OCS map where you have a lot of on-map displays, which I'm not really the biggest fan of. I prefer my displays to be off-map, personally. I think it's a bit of a bit ugly to have a bunch, piles of counters on your map. I do prefer the cleaner look of maps that have the dead pile and everything like that on an off-map display, because half the time with the dead pile, you're putting it back in the bags or back in the tray anyway. So there's no need to waste space on the map to have piles of reinforcements or dead piles. Personally, the way that Bitterwoods does it for their off-map displays is exactly what you need. Then there's two more games that I saw. One is Twilight Struggle. I mean, everyone pretty much knows what that is at this point. And the last is Weimar. Weimar is a game that has also seemed very, very popular. There was a learning session around that. I didn't get to participate, even though I really wanted to. I was just very committed to my Most Fearful Sacrifice game on Saturday and Friday, so those were the only slots that Weimar was open. But the game itself is, because I was set up on the table next to it, I got to hear the conversations that were going on, and it seems a lot like Here I Stand or any of those games where you are negotiating a lot. And so if you are into a game where you get to negotiate, then maybe this Weimar is for you. It is a pretty expensive game, though, so do expect to pay top dollar for it. But I can tell you from getting to see it physically, production quality is extremely high, so you do get what you pay for in this case. It is a really gorgeous looking game, but very complicated rules. So it would be best if you could learn it from someone who already knows how to play it. Not sure if it's the kind of game where you can pick it up and learn the rules yourself and then teach it to your friends. I think it's best to probably try to learn it from someone online if you're going to go that route. Finally, I finished up the weekend on Sunday with a campaign game of Bitter Woods. And this is a game I've been featuring on my channel pretty heavily. We were trying to play the campaign game, but unfortunately I had to leave early, just for family reasons. And we only got to the 18 p.m. turn, so we didn't make it too far in. I was playing the Germans, and I was definitely way behind schedule, in my opinion. I had some real trouble with some of my better odds attacks, rolling sixes. 6 is bad in Bitterwoods, and was just completely stalled out in the north. In fact, he had time to build an entire front line in the north already as of like 4 turns in, so I was totally screwed. It wasn't going anywhere. But it was a fun learning experience. I got to learn a lot more of the turn 1 strategy on the German side, because it was really my first time playing a head-to-head in person, competitively. And so the friendly competition aspect of it was a good learning experience, because I learned what not to do. And I learned some of the tips and tricks for the very first turn. I really just need to play it more. I love the game. It's just, I wish I had someone that lived next door to me that I could just play it with every day, to be honest. It's a game that is meant to be 2-player and experienced head-to-head. So I am going to try to get more into Vassal for both that and The Most Fearful Sacrifice, and really start playing both of those games more heavily. As far as what else I added to the old collection, other than what I showed, the Sovereign of the Seas and Most Fearful Sacrifice, I did buy. I was bad. I bought 2 other games, which both of them will probably feature on the channel relatively soon. The first is a game that I've been eyeing basically since I found out Compass was a company, and this is Compass's very first game that they ever made, Silent War, and it's about submarines in the Pacific. A lot of submarine games are built around the Atlantic, and they're German-sided, but this is about American submarine campaign against the Japanese, and so this is the most recent reprint of it that got the 2.0 label put onto it, and it is really good quality. It was last year. It was very expensive because it was brand new, so I didn't get it. This year it was half off, so I was like, no time like the present. So I bought it. I've already unboxed it. As you can see, I've been learning the rules. I played a patrol scenario. It says to start with a patrol scenario, so I played a patrol scenario, and I'm probably just going to dive right into starting a campaign, because that's the experience I'm really looking for out of it. I don't want to go through every short campaign. I just want to play the long campaign and have fun. So I don't particularly care about being super competitive and trying to get the highest score I can. I'll play it till I get tired of it, basically. And then the last game that I got, and this was an impulse buy right at the end, is Carrier Battle Philippine Sea. This is another solitaire game, and the reason that I got this was because I've been very, very interested in the Pacific War, particularly the differences between Phil Sea and Leyte Gulf, because the philosophies of the Navy completely changed because of their commanders. In World War II, there was a 2-commander setup. There were 2 fleet admirals, basically. Spruance, who was in charge at Philippine Sea, and at Halsey, who was in charge at Leyte Gulf. And their differences in aggression and philosophy around what their priority mission actually is, really were controversial topics and very interesting topics. But I wanted to learn more about the Philippine Sea stuff in hopes that maybe they'll follow this up with a Leyte Gulf game, and then I could play them both. But this game is focused around the invasion of Saipan, So the impetus for the battle was that we were invading Saipan, and the Japanese were trying to disrupt that invasion, and it started what became known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, where the American Navy essentially shot down every plane that the Japanese had left, to the point where they had carriers that had like 5 or 6 planes in some cases, and we just decimated them. So the important part of that battle was winning the air battle, but the controversial part was that Spruance decided not to chase the enemy fleet in hopes that he could better protect the landings, because his objective was to protect the landings at Saipan, and so that's why he didn't chase. Then in Lazy Gulf, the opposite approach was taken, but albeit with a much different force level, because at that point there were even more ships. And so the larger fleet at Lazy Gulf later in the year allowed Halsey to basically completely absolve himself of responsibility for protecting the invasion and leave it to the 7th Fleet. Whereas in Philippine Sea, the first Battle of Philippine Sea, they decided that it was best to just stick with the landings and protect them. So what I'm hoping is that it's a very interesting air war kind of game, and I don't know too much about the ways that solitaire games approach naval battles. So one of the hardest things about playing a solitaire naval game is the importance of hidden information in a naval game. Usually in 2-player naval games, you have tracks where you are plotting your movement, and then there's a mechanism to reconcile those tracks to see if you have combat. There's search mechanics. Basically, you don't know everything about your enemy's force. And so I want to see how a solitaire game approaches that, if it's just rolling for approaching planes, or is there a more historical way that they do it? Is it on a schedule? Is it something that you can just figure out, and if you play the game a bunch of times, will you really have a good plan and know exactly what to do? So that's why I bought it. It was kind of an impulse buy, but again, half off, you can't beat that. And I figured I would probably get my money's worth out of it because it's a topic I like. So that was my experience at Compass Expo 2024, Spring Compass Expo 2024. I do plan to attend November's Expo as well, and in that I probably will focus more of my attention on Bitter Woods, although I would like to play another game of Most Fearful Sacrifice if it's in the cards. Well, until next time, see you.